Well, we all know that the Big Ten has been in the news in the last few cycles, but Big 12 saying we're here, media days on the horizon. Conference champs Baylor earns the #1 spot in the preseason poll. Bears are the top choice in the rankings for the first time in Big 12 history and broke Oklahoma's 6-year streak as the favorite. But Baylor may be #1 in the eyes of media representatives who voted in that preseason poll. However, odds makers at Caesars have a different view, perhaps liability concern with some of the big boys. Texas, the betting favorite at 2-1, closely followed by Oklahoma at +220. You'll actually find Baylor at 6-1 behind Oklahoma State, with the Cowboys holding steady at 4-1. Let's wake up with senior writer and reporter Dennis Dodd ahead of media days on Wednesday. So, Dennis, macro looking at the Big 12, what's the most immediate concern facing the conference, you think, this week?
I wouldn't call it a concern right now, Tommy. I just think it's, holding hands and staying together and looking forward into the future. This realignment stuff broke again last week. And the Big 12 worst case scenario is that they just go forward with the 12 they have in 2025. Any scenario in realignment that doesn't end with them being poached, and I don't think they will, from the Pac-12, and the Big 12 is fine. It's a heck of a conference. When you look at, you just showed it, you showed the depth at the top. Baylor, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State's trying to rebound. Kansas, of all people, is not going to be as bad. So this is a pretty good conference going forward. And then you add those 4 teams after losing Texas and Texas, Oklahoma. I think they're going to be fine. So you talk about conferences in flux right now. The Big 12 is not one of them unless you count their new commissioner, Brett Yormark.
Speaking of the new commissioner, thrown into the fire there, Dennis, what time of baptism do we expect here and the impact he'll have?
Well, there was a shockwave sent through the conference, it's fair to say, when he got hired to replace Bob Bowlesby. An unknown from Jay-Z's Rock Nation, had been an executive with the New Jersey Nets, had run the Barclays Center, dabbled in NASCAR. But again, like George Kliavkoff, like Larry Scott, like Kevin Warren, from outside traditional college athletics. Now, since then, he has hit the ground running. He's made a tremendous impact on the ADs in the league and has thrown himself, Tommy, feet first into the realignment discussion and future of the Big 12. I'm told he's been on every call. He's been very engaged. And he doesn't even start, Tommy, officially till August 1st. So he's going to be in Dallas this week for the media days, along with Bob Bowlesby. They're going to tag team, I guess, doing the State of the Union address. But Brett Yormark, a New York guy with a Big Ten degree from Indiana, has ingratiated himself the Big 12 pretty quickly.
All right, so we'll get to experience that and then officially take over in due time. Getting back to what we saw there, Dennis, in terms of Baylor, and it really was tight at the top 3. We saw that reflected in the odds. Let's talk about the expectations for Baylor this year.
Yeah, I had a hard time keeping Baylor out of my top 4 this year, just because I'm really impressed with what Dave Aranda has done. He's the thinking man's coach. He's kind of that next level chess piece guy who does things, I guess, really smart and differently. You saw that in the spring where he named his starter at quarterback, Blake Shapen, who was the backup last year and came in for Jerry Bohannon when he was injured. Well, that gave Bohannon a chance to transfer right away. Usually coaches hold out on that decision till late August, so they can try to get some depth in that quarterback room. But no, he gave it to Blake Shapen, who in the Big 12 championship game completed 17 straight passes and beating Oklahoma State. Baylor, I like them to win the league again. I think they've got talent on both sides. They lose a lot, but they've got a lot, going from 2-7 to 12-2 last year. They were Jackson Player, a transfer from Tulsa, who was a 2-time All-American Conference player. Connor Galvin, their offensive tackle, was the Big 12 Lineman of the Year. I mentioned the quarterback. Defensively, they're really ball hawks over there. They had a 96-yard pick for a TD in the bowl game against Ole Miss. I think they're going to be really, really good if they can get past a stretch where during the season they play at BYU, at Oklahoma, at Texas, and then at Texas Tech, not in a row, but all on the road. I think they can do some damage this year and probably maybe move into that playoff contention.
Still amazing, the ending for Baylor's season, literally there at the centimeter inch line there that we saw there. Getting to Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams out, Brent Venables, Dylan Gabriel, I should say, in. Give me the impact for both coach and quarterback that they'll have there at OU.
Well, talk about shock. Obviously, Lincoln Riley left, but they're going to be kind of the dominant program they were under Brent Venables. I think it says more about Oklahoma than Brent Venables that he chose at age 52 Oklahoma. Very familiar with the program. He'd been there for 13 or 14 years under Bob Stoops as a defensive coach. Everything's in place, and that's a big reason why he took the job. 8 transfers out, 10 transfers in, 14 starters lost. You mentioned Caleb Williams. They went and got, plug and play Dylan Gabriel from UCF, a quarterback who's established, thrown for 8,000 yards. I think what offensive coordinator Jeff Levy wants from him is maybe better than a 60% career, completion percentage. They were together in 2019 at UCF, so there's some familiarity there. But as far as Venables goes, he has slipped right in. I think the Sooners will be better defensively than they have been in years because it's Brent Venables. He's the #1 defensive coach in the country. So I think they'll be more shut down. They have to get the offense a little bit better. Averaged under 40 for the first time since 2014. I think that's a concern. But they've got plenty of depth at running back and receiver.
Lastly, Dennis, when it comes to Texas, where are you looking on the field for the upside potentially for the Longhorns? Quinn Ewers, Bijan Robinson, where does that land for you?
Does anybody remember that Texas finished 5-7 last year? Does anybody remember they had their longest losing streak since 1956 and lost to Kansas? The answer, roundly is no. Steve Sarkisian had one of the best off seasons in the country. Getting Quinn Ewers established at quarterback, landing Arch Manning, which to me, Tommy, was a de facto contract extension. Nothing's going to happen to him until Arch Manning gets his shot at quarterback. I think Texas has a chance to have the best offense in the Big 12 this season. And in the Big 12, that means a lot. That means you can, contend for the conference title. As I mentioned, Quinn Ewers, Bijan Robinson, the fine running back, Xavier Worthy, maybe the best receiver in the Big 12. And so if they can put up 40, 45 a game and get past the rather shaky offensive line, those are some big ifs, then I think they can contend. Steve Sarkisian had a fantastic offseason. He proved himself to be a great recruiter. And I think, that second game against Alabama is going to be huge.
Dennis, certainly appreciated. Safe travels. We'll be checking in with you, of course, this week as we talked about Big 12 Media Days, which gets underway on Wednesday. Cover 3 podcast. Guys, have you covered. It's a mailbag edition. What program is about to have its best season in a decade? The Cover 3 crew talking about Big 12, realignment, and the NCAA losing power and more.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.